So a duck walked into Kroger, and he waddled over to the deli and hopped up on the counter. And the guy working there looks at him all funny. Duck goes, "Yeah, could I get an olive?" And the guy's like, "We don't have olives here." Duck says, "Cool." So he leaves. Next day, same duck, same Kroger, waddles over there. Same guy's working. Guy looks at him and says, "Yeah?" Duck says, "Yeah, can I get an olive?" Guy says, "We don't have olives here." Duck says, "All right, cool." So he leaves. Next day, same duck, same Kroger. At the deli, hops up on the counter. Guy sees him, same guy, looks at him and says, "Yeah?" He says, "Yeah, can I get an olive?" Dude loses his mind. "Are you kidding me? You stupid duck. I have told you 3 days in a row that we do not have olives. If you come in here tomorrow and you ask me for an olive, I'm going to staple your little webbed feet to the counter. Do you got it now?" Duck's like, "Whoa, cool, yeah, no olives." So he leaves. Comes back the next day. Same counter, same guy's working there. Kind of glares at him and goes, "Yeah, what can I get for you?" Duck says, "Yeah, you got any staples?" Guy says, "No." He says, "Good, I'll take an olive." It's just an all-time classic. My father gave that to me, and I don't know. There's something in me that says we need some more laughter in our lives, right? Like there's a lot of serious stuff going on, and I just felt like we're opening with the duck joke. So my name's Buddy. If you don't know me, I'm a pastor on staff here. Been gone for a couple months, and I've been on sabbatical. Now, if you don't know, if you're new here, my name technically is Alan, so that might freak you out a little bit. Buddy's my nickname. On stage here, 3 of our leaders, I don't know if you know this, but Ty, who leads worship, that's not his name. His name's Michael. And Jack, who speaks all the time, that's not his name. His name's John. Pretty much Pastor Mike and Pastor John are the only people who don't lie about their names when we come up on stage. So just so you know, my name's Alan. So been on sabbatical. Didn't go exactly as I thought, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. At the beginning of my sabbatical, it was going pretty good. I feel like on a sabbatical, one thing I read about and experienced is up front you have this need to decompress, to stop thinking about everything and ministering and listening to everything and trying to figure out what to do. And so I experienced that. And then all of a sudden I came out of it and I was like, all right, now we start doing other things. And I had these plans and I was going to hang out, made some plans with some of you. Let's just have dinner. Let's just hang out. And I had these books that I was like, okay, I'm going to read these books. And then COVID showed up. And so I'd say it probably took half my sabbatical, right? So sabbatical was 10 Sundays, kind of worked in between, so maybe 8 weeks, and about half of that was kind of COVID. So I'm going to talk about COVID a bit more at the end of service. Feel like we're supposed to do some prayer and some stuff over that, so I'll talk about that more. I planned on attending a lot of different churches in person. I went to exactly 0. So up front in the decompression, I was watching online. I thought that was good rest for my knees. We're kind of recovering from some stuff. And then again, when I started to get ready to go and visit some people, I just basically had no energy. And so watched a bunch. For the last month, I have been watching our stream online. So I have watched Mike's messages on Joel and Jack's, and I saw John's communion. I saw you guys. It's this thing about screaming recently. I'm trying to get caught up, but yeah, I mean, I'm still a little bit like this. My wife prophesying out of a sci-fi movie. I'm like, woo! It's definitely going to be impromptu date night. That was on fire, but. Yeah, so if you don't know me, you're getting to know me very quickly. So I've watched the stream and, so been talking about Joel. And so I just kind of want to say kind of one thing about it. And then basically today I'm going to give you a shotgun blast of things that I've been thinking about for the last couple months. So yeah, you can be a little scared, but I definitely am not giving you everything I thought about. I actually tried to pare it down. But my feeling here is that, number one, we're family. We're a family. And so some of that's like if somebody goes away for a while and they come back, it's normal just to hey, how'd it go? How was your vacation? So part of that's just normal. And secondly, one thing that I've learned is that a lot of times God uses leadership to kind of lead the way. So a lot of things that he starts speaking in the leaders eventually wind up helping other lives. And we're meant to share out of the abundance of what God's doing in our heart. And so I'm just going to share like a lot of things today. But I thought this would be fun. This would be different, a little interactive. Here's what I want from you. If something I say today you think is for you in any way, I want you to acknowledge it. In general, I think that's a good thing to do anyway, right? Like in general, in worship, could you imagine if we all got together in unity and nobody sang or moved? The overall atmosphere of the room would be different. And yet, sometimes that's what we do when someone's speaking. So if I say something, you go, man, I think that, I don't care, say something, raise your hand. I was thinking about this. I feel like it would help the other people in the room. And for those of you who are online, it would help if you would post, hey, I think what you said about this might be for me. And I think it would be helpful for everybody to go, oh man, somebody else is going through that? That's, it kind of helps. And so, yeah. So Joel is, kind of a little bit of research, just real quick. A minor prophet, right? So in the Old Testament, we have kind of broken it into segments. And one of them is the minor and major prophets. I used to look at it as like a competitive thing. Like when they get in heaven, would they taunt? Would the major guys go, stay over there? The minor people, but this would be considered a minor prophet. And I kind of was like, so what's that about? Probably the minor prophets, it's just something we've done, not God. But they're usually a bit shorter in length. And they're usually a bit more, not as broad. Right, so the major prophets would be maybe a little bit longer and a little bit broader in the scope of the content, right? So that's kind of Joel. And then Jack and Mike, you saw there was a prophetic nature. There was some prophecies that Joel did. Jack brought up this interesting thing where Joel seemed to go back to the plagues, right? Almost like prophetically, he's like, right now, it's time to remember the thing that happened because it's going to help us now. And I think Mike it was that covered the Joel prophecy that poured out in Acts. And so that one, it's like very clear where they go, man, Joel prophesied. And then later on they go, oh, this is what he was saying. I like that, right? Like sometimes God leaves everything so mysterious. And every now and then he goes, here, I'm just going to let you have this one, right? And so Joel was prophetic. And so I started talking to God about the prophetic over my sabbatical. I go, Lord, I don't really know that I know what the word prophetic means. I know prophecy, but prophetic maybe not even in the Bible. It's more of an idea. And so I started talking to him about it. And I'll tell you one thing that I felt like he was communicating to me is maybe prophetic is when you hear God say something and it's true and you believe it to be true, though currently there's no evidence for it. There's no sight-based evidence for it, right? So when Joel prophesied, I highly doubt his mind understood all the details of what he was saying. I think he heard God say something, and he goes, I believe it, and he said it, and it was true like hundreds of years later, right? And so that's kind of one element and one thing that I've covered or, talking to God about. But I think there's a lot of things that could be prophetic. Sometimes there's like images, storylines. There can be something happens, but it's actually prophetic of the future. So what do I mean? I don't know. Like it's possible to me that when the Israelites were in slavery for 400 years before their big deliverance, before the Exodus, I believe that was what it was, but it's also possible to me that it was prophetic of the 400 years of silence between Malachi and Acts. That it kind of like, oh man, the 400 years get you going, is that? And then all of a sudden there's this new freedom, so things like that can be prophetic in the way that I'm classifying it, okay? Other things are, again, easier, like was Jonah in the belly of a fish? Yeah. But was it also something prophetic about it? Again, God's like, I'll let you have this one. Jesus says, just like Jonah was prophetic. It was telling a story that was also pointing to the Messiah. Okay, so I believe that sometimes our lives are prophetic. That God does something in your life, and he's like, I want to do this. So it's like you go, well, with the comfort God gives you, he wants to comfort others. So it's almost like it is what it is, but it's also meant to be so much more, right? It's almost prophetic in nature. So I think sometimes that's one of the reasons I wanted to kind of go through these shotgun blasts of sabbatical sayings, is because maybe some of this was not just for me. I believe that some of this is going to help your life, okay? So kind of got I grouped them into 4 different things that hopefully, again, some of this helps you. And if something you think is for you, you got to acknowledge it, or else, I don't know. Literally don't know. You just don't acknowledge it, and you go, I am not doing your stupid thing. Okay. All right, so the first thing, talking to God over my sabbatical, how do you change your habits? And so someone at church heard from God and said, hey, I want to recommend this book. And so I thought I would just share that with you. Win the Day by Mark Batterson. Okay, so if you have habits, I have probably 4 books at home that I'm currently tinkering with. Again, I think I would have been done with them if not for the corona. But this one is one of them, Mark Batterson. Some of you might know he may be more famous for writing a book called The Prayer Circle, about the importance of covering things in prayer. And he started a church only after covering the city in prayer. And the prayer circles like cover your family in prayer, like literal circles, like walk it, pray it. And so he's kind of famous for that. But he wrote a book called Win the Day. And he talks in there about how maybe God doesn't want us to try to get too much into everything. About like there's many things, right? Give us this day our daily bread. Now, we, of course, make plans, but there's something about, like, winning today. So if you've got a big habit that you go, man, this thing's huge, and instead of trying to change the thing, the idea is, perspective-wise, can I just win today? And just try to, like, live a daily life, give us this day our daily bread in connection with God, and let him help you win the day. That's the idea. So I thought I would share that. In my trying to do this, one thing I feel like God was ministering to me is these 2 ideas that are pretty similar. I felt like they kind of came out with the gifts this morning. Instead of you trying first, it's about you resting first. The first phrase I got that I feel like God's going, who before do? Who before you do? So everybody wants to do things with their life. Everybody wants to be important and do the things they're supposed to. But I feel like sometimes when things aren't going right, if you immerse yourself in the do, you get lost. You weren't doing it right to begin with. And I feel like God's going, let's get into your identity first. Let's get into who you are. And let's let the do come out of there instead of you just trying to fix. When you try to do first, you can really try to fix everything without God. And then the things that are broken, I feel like it's just really not. Every now and then you can change a habit, but in the bigger, deeper things, I'm saying, let's go to God. Who am I? And let me act like that. There's a difference in that, and right? So like a inside-out sort of thing, a faith-based thing. And the second one, I was doing I do like a little crossword puzzle where you rearrange the letters, and they like to use this second word rest with the W. I was like, I think that's a word, and it is. And so I look, and it's like the word for wrestle. And I felt like God's like, before you get out and start fighting, before you do it, rest before you rest. Don't get involved in the battle until you're in a rested spot, right? Until you know who God is, till you know who you are, till you know he's for you. Until you're ready to go to battle, you need to rest. And a lot of times we've been so active, our lives have been so busy that if we don't step back, I probably think everybody needs a sabbatical now. Probably everybody needs. Our giving went down tremendously in December. No one's working. But everybody needs to take a step back. God, what are we doing here? What are we doing? And from a restful place, you'll find that you like doing your work. I want to read you something about who you are. And from a restful place, this is a scripture from 1 Peter 2 that hopefully will minister to you. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. That's the sort of thing that you need to take with you when you're going through your day, when you're going through the tough times, is who you are, what he thinks about you, and what, those sort of things. So I'd like to give you this quote. I watched a movie over the break, and it was called Dune. Did anyone see it? Okay. All right. I feel like a lot of people that I saw that loved it were like, oh, the cinematography. I'm like, it's sand. It's literally like, I'm looking at sand for 3 hours. I'm more like a story guy, and I'm like, the story was slow. I'm like, 15 minutes, they've said 3 words. I'm like, gosh, I can't look at the sand anymore. But anyway, there was one phrase in there that I feel like is something. So there's like a king, and his son is the prince, and they're talking about when the prince becomes king, and they're kind of having this father-son conversation. And, the son's kind of like, I don't know if I want it. What if I don't want to be king? And I don't know, but I felt like this was something in my heart for me, maybe for some people here. Basically, he said, if you say no to the calling, this is the dad talking to the son, if you don't want my role, if you don't walk into the calling and all that life has for you, I just need you to know, you'll still be everything that I need you to be. You're my son. And I just thought that was the who. When I heard that, you could see it in the acting. Now he wants to do, right? But when you have the whole pressure of doing everything, right? Like with this guy, I felt like when I was praying, like I would say prophetically, some of you, God is calling into something big. And if you start with the big and you start looking at the big, I feel like that's going to put a lot of pressure on you. And what you need to do is just know that God's saying, hey, I got a big, huge, I love you, huge. You're going to change. Some of you in this room are changing the world. You're going to change big things. But you don't need to get so worked up on the pressure of that. You need to look in the Father's eyes and hear him tell you, even if you did nothing, you're everything I need you to be. You're my child. And that just motivates you to go, all right, Dad, you know what I mean? He loves you. So that first was kind of out of the, how do you change habits? And I just really feel like rest and who, work out of those places. Work out of the restful place that God loves you, he empowers you, he's for you, and work from there. 2, random ideas. All right, we'll just go with this. Assets and liabilities. I feel like I was talking to God about the fact that all of us are assets and liabilities. And I feel like it sounds horrible. Who likes to go, hey, you're a liability? Oh, that's great. And it's America, right? Nobody wants to think of themselves as a liability. And yet, in the spiritual sense, if you don't accept the fact that you have need of other people, that you don't bring everything to the party, you're missing it. You will never be complete without the body. You are not. You have a liability. You walk in with need, not want. You have wants. You have need of other people in your life. You have other gifts that God has given other people, and you have need of them. And if you would, I think sometimes you go to church for a while and you start to go, the goal is to become to the point where I'm never a liability, I never have need. And I just want to say, you'll never get there. In this life, you're part of a body. You will not have everything. And I even see in my own life, sometimes you are actually the asset in a certain area, and then all of a sudden you're not. And that's super painful, right? Like you go, oh, maybe one day you have tons of money and you're like, woo! You're the giver, and then the next day you're like, anyone? That's hard. But you know what? Your part's to be part of the body. And the asset part also, I want to tell you that the Spirit has given you a gift. Sometimes I think we sit at home and we go, I need to go to church today. I probably won't like what they're doing anyway. And I understand that. That's the liability side of you talking. But what if I told you, like whenever I say, what if I told you, I always say it in the Matrix voice, like what if I told you that somebody at church needs you? What if I told you that before service or after service, you were going to drastically alter someone's life by a word that God gave you? Or what if you're sitting there and you go, what if you're the person who goes, you know those people who go up and get the microphone and they say the stuff? I will die before I do. What if one day God's like, I got something for you, and you're like, no, you don't. You know? God loves to use the meek. And what if one day you're the one who's going to shake up the whole city because of something that God wants to do through you? What if I told you you're always going to have an asset side, and you shouldn't always just think, what am I going to get? You should think that, but you should go, what am I going to give? Where can I sow? Who can I love? Who needs to be greeted before service? Who needs to be, you know, the person that goes, I never meet any friends in church, and you see them sprinting out after? Maybe you're the one that trips them. Hey, you catch them. They need, you know, the introverts, they're like, oh, I'm leaving before service is over today. Anyway, maybe that's you, okay? So you're an asset and a liability. Read all of 1 Corinthians 12 if you want to learn more about how you have something and other people have something and you both need each other. I was listening to a song, I think it was by Maverick, called Love is a Miracle, and I just found that pretty fun to think about. Love is a miracle. I feel like, you know, in this life, there's ways we can love each other. You say, I love you, but what God does, what he did is a miracle. Before we ever did anything, that's a miracle. And love is a miracle. And sometimes there's somebody who needs you to be the miracle. I'll tell you that probably the biggest impact you can have on life is the person that is the biggest jerk to you. The one that would prove what grace is. And when you go to the miracle place and you find that over there and you go, I don't really know why, but I absolutely love you, and you give them exactly what they don't deserve, oh man, that's a miracle. Love that. Okay, next one. Assume there will be problems before you start a project. So, here's the thing. I feel like as Christians, we don't have this when it comes to our faith and with church, and we go, oh, I know. God is good, Jesus is sweet, and everybody's awesome. And so if I start to try to grow in the Lord, there will actually be no problems in my life ever. Oh, you'll fall for that one about 75 times, and you'll go, what's up? Right? I've just been in this too long. So commit before you go. First, you go count the cost. Before you're going to go, you go, no, I'm in. And you just go, there's going to be problems. And when they come, you know, I feel like so much of our disappointment comes because problems come and we were assuming everything would be easy. And when it's not, we're like, oh, people are rude in church. Yeah. Last thing that was kind of random is sleep is important. And I think all the nappers go, yeah, I heard a lot of people, that was for me. But I think if you're like me, sometimes you've had trouble with sleep. And I'm not talking about like a day or like a little season. Like I had kids, I know, I get it. But I'm talking about long term. If you're sleep deprived, I'm telling you it starts to affect everything. And that's not God's plan for your life. So if it's an ongoing problem, I think you just take it to the Lord in prayer. You get yourself a little watch, you monitor it, you make it a goal. I need to get the adequate amount of sleep, whatever that is for you, right? Figure it out. Okay. Bible. My third analogy, I didn't tell you that. So I was wondering, so sleep, I don't know, but maybe your whole life, if you added it up, do you ever think about this, that maybe you should sleep a third of your life? Like while you're here, right? Like, isn't that that's just a weird thought to me. You should spend a third of your life unconscious. That's just amazing. So God made that system. Why? Why do you want me not doing things for a third of my life? Anyway, I thought about this, and this is again just my musings. Not saying God said this. But I believe that we are three-part beings. You have a spirit, a soul, and a body. I feel like your body doesn't really lead things, right? I feel like you have to make a choice if your faith or sight. Does your mind and your emotions really lead things, or does your spirit? Does God speak to you, and do you let that dictate what you do? Or are you? I feel like in America, where a lot of people are one or the other, we're very thoughtful. Oh, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't feel it. And I feel like God saying like a third of you should be asleep. And maybe it's the soul. The soul is meant to follow your spirit, right? We should be led by the spirit, not by our intellect. Even though, of course, you think and you feel. Anyway, just Buddy musings. Bible. So I love the Bible, and I'm very excited about it. And yet I say, I have to be missing things. And so I saw this book on Twitter. I follow Twitter for Christians and football and wrestling, right? And so anytime I find, I like what they said, I follow them, and then I try to look at their friends, and I try to get lots of different spiritual ideas through that. And somebody recommended this book called Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes. I'm like, yes. Yes. And so I'm like maybe a third of the way through it, and it's fascinating. And the goal isn't to tell you what the Bible's saying. The goal is to tell you that because you're from the West, you're probably misreading things, and some things you're not even able to see. They're like white noise. I'll give you an example from the beginning of the book. The pastor or whatever did an experiment with 100 Americans, said, I want you to read the story of the prodigal son as well as you can, and then as soon as you're done, we're going to close it, and you're going to tell your neighbor every detail you remember about the story. 100 people. 92 of them did not mention that there was a famine in the story. The Western culture, Americans don't see that, and they can't even remember it 5 seconds after they read it. It's at the end of the story. Can't remember it. Did the experiment with 50 people in Russia. 42 of them said that was the point of the whole story. They don't call it the prodigal son. That story to them is about how even when you have nothing, God can provide, right? We have called it the prodigal son, and we go, this is the meaning, and that comes from our Western culture. And it's just interesting to me that you don't think about the famine. And the author isn't saying that we got it right. He's actually saying that probably the Eastern people are doing the same. They're going, it's only about the famine. The point is to be aware of your biases in your culture and to try to read the Bible and get everything that God has for you out of it. So that's that. I felt like God said this. I was talking to him about where do we draw the line on certain things? How do we know? How do we discern what is you and not? And I felt like God said this. Be more interested in how his kingdom works than how this one does. We should be studying him more and his kingdom and not blitzing ourselves with how this realm works and then trying to fit in God into that. We gotta, if you want to know how things work, you gotta go there, and then they come. But anyway, I think there's a difference there that I'm still whatever. And then this was like a warning for me and for you. The TV, streaming apps, the news, and social media, this is probably news for everybody. They have agendas now. I know. They are pushing what they're pushing. I'm not saying good, bad. I'm saying they're pushing. And I'm saying that if you give yourself so much to any of that, it's getting in. And it's influencing the way you think, feel, believe, act in church. And I'm telling you that I feel like boundaries are healthy. And so I had to do this in my sabbatical. I realized, for example, with Facebook, when I started my sabbatical, I just signed off. Okay? But I tried to turn it off, but I was still getting emails that would tell me, hey, so-and-so messaged you. And I'm like, yay, I have no idea what they said, but okay. Anyway, before 3 weeks were up, I had an email that said you have over 1,400 notifications. And so for me, I am the type of person that likes to keep everything clear. Okay? How many of you are me? How many of you have over 3,000 unread emails? And me and Chris are married to our opposites. That's always super fun. I'm like, give me your phone. I'm clearing this. I might need that email one day, she says. Okay. But because of my personality, it turned into a problem. because I'm getting so many notifications that I wanted to keep it clear all the time. And it was pulling me out of everything all day, and I didn't realize it until I signed off, and I go, oh my gosh, how many do I have? That's ridiculous. And so when I signed back on, what I did was I just turned them off. Right? I was like letting them call me every time I get 2 notifications. I'm like, I gotta clear it. I've got a red circle. That was real. I had to clear it. But that was all day. They were taking my life. And so I go, okay, I'm not doing that, okay? Where am I? So anyway, having those boundaries, some of you probably need to just get off of the news for a week. Some of you are maybe going to have to sign off of social media for a bit of time, or some boundary. Okay, that was for somebody. All right. All right, lastly, I'm going to wind up here with some ideas on, told you the prophetic. Years ago, there was a movie by Marvel called Civil War. And I'll tell you, I think it was almost prophetic in nature. So the idea is you had all these superheroes, and they had gotten in a fight, and some people had inadvertently died. And a guy's family had died, and he's holding the Avengers accountable. And he goes, hey, here's the deal. The Avengers, when they're united, you can't win. So here's what I do. I don't fight them. I create a civil war. I get them to fight each other. And I feel like the enemy has been doing that for a couple of years now. If we are united, he can't get in. If we would let the Spirit get us together, we win. And so instead, the enemy is saying, let me do anything I can to get in there and divide these people. Fight he doesn't even care. Anything and everything. I want division because it's the only way I can win. They're too strong with Christ at the head, and when they're united with the Holy Spirit, we can't win. Civil war. I think it was prophetic. Unity is God. Division is not. I use this almost as a test. Is this going to lead to more unity in the church? Sometimes it's not like you got to say yes to everything. You know what I mean? But you got to say, will this lead to unity in the church, or will this lead to division, and know where it came from? I'll give you 1 Corinthians 1:10. I appeal to you, brothers, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be united in the same mind and the same judgment. God desires love and unity in our body. So I felt like that was prophetic, and I feel like currently it's a tactic of the enemy is let's divide them up. And at all costs, let's get them fighting. The prophetic, again, one thing before I talk about COVID, if we're going to be prophetic, I will tell you, I think Mike brought this up, but there's 2 things that I feel like I want to say that are real important. The first is you must say or do in agreement with the will of God. Right? You can't just go, that guy was mean to me. Lord, I pray he dies today. It just doesn't work. Some of you tried it. But you got to be in agreement with the will of God. So God, what is your will here? What is your will in our church? What is your will in my life? What is your will at my work? What is your will with my family? What is your will? What matters? I will also say that how matters. We need to be Spirit-led. Okay? I'm going through all the miracles of Jesus. How many times do you think he did the same exact pattern? Like none. He was led by the Spirit. I don't really understand how it all works, but I know that his pattern was I do what the Father, what I see him do. I look to the Father, I join myself to his will, and I think the how matters. I think the spitting in the mud and rubbing it in the eyes sometimes is pivotal to the operation. If you want to get God's will done, I think you got to ask him how. Now, I don't exactly know why. Part of me guesses, went with an easier word. So part of me guesses that sometimes you hear God, but there's a difference between having something to give someone and them being ready to receive it. So sometimes how you do it might have to do with how the other person can probably receive it. Okay? I don't know, but I know that it matters that, there were different kinds. All right, so COVID. I feel like we're supposed to end. We're supposed to pray and declare things over people that still have COVID. We got it, again, we have been home for a month, and I was watching, and I got to say, I was probably sad first, because people that I know and love were dying. I know some of you are like me. You lost a loved one. You lost a friend. You lost a relative. Gosh, I've only been gone 2 months. I think I know 6 people that are friends of mine that died in those 2 months. That's crazy. And it made me sad. And some of them I found out, I was praying for them. And they didn't get saved. They died. And I'm sad for the spouses. And I'm sad for the people I was sad. And these were people that had faith. These were people, some of these people were strong in the faith, believed, and just knew the word. I'm going, oh man, this makes me sad, Lord. And then COVID showed up at my house, and my whole family got it. Shelby was down a week, 3 days hard, and then all the kids had it. Maybe Isaac a little bit. They were a bit mild, and then it hit me, and I was just like a mess. And again, probably took, in one way or another, probably half my sabbatical, probably a month. And the main thing is I just had fatigue. I mean, I had to seriously debate if I was going to shower. There's one thing good about not inviting people to your house. You just had no energy, and I had a head thing, and then, I lost the taste and smell, and that was weird. I couldn't even tell if I was hungry. So you'd eat, and I'm like, I don't know. I should probably be eating Brussels sprouts because I'll never eat them when I can smell them. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and I wanted to be kind of transparent and honest about this. Not only was I sick and kind of going, man, fear tried to show up. It came knocking on my mind. And real stuff, right? COVID's real. People died, really. People sick, really. And, but one thing that came in was, I wonder because you're big if you have diabetes. You saw with diabetes. I heard it. And I was like, it wasn't like that was a non-real fact, but right away I knew it was like, let's get fear in there too. I want you to be afraid. And I just go, Lord, I'm yours. And I wasn't afraid. I didn't receive it. And there was a secondary attack. And the devil came, I could hear it. And I knew the whole thing was, let's get fear in there too. By the way, I think the fear element, I actually think it hurts you physically. Worry and fear manifest physically and complicate issues. I'm not saying diabetes isn't a real thing. I'm saying fear complicates the matter. And the secondary thing he came at me with is, what would you think if your kids grew up without a dad? And then he started showing me people that I've known who lost their dad. And I tell you, I didn't lose. I didn't get into fear. I countered it with, you know what? I'm not afraid. I value my role as the father. I value my role as a church. But I got to tell you, it's not on me. If I were gone, my church would step up. There would be pain, hurt, sure. I get it. We cry when people die. But they would have a dad. Physically, in this world, you guys would take care of them. I cry occasionally, too. That still hasn't changed. But anyway, I was greatly encouraged by my faith in you. That you guys wouldn't let my family suffer. And because of that, no fear could enter. So that was one thing I just want to say. Fear is part of it. And I was talking to God about it because I started to get mad. I'm like, everybody, our church has got, everybody's getting all this COVID. People are dying. And I started to get mad. And rather than go, well, maybe this is something that we just can't do anything about, I got mad and said, I want to fight. I don't want to back down. If the Christians all just go, there's nothing we can do because it's COVID, I think it'll get worse. I think we're here to go, no, we believe in God. We're praying. What is your will, God? What do you want to do? And so I started asking them, for me. And right about then, Mike has started his Joel series, and he's like, declare an authority. And I was like, wow. I was kind of glad I was gone because truthfully, my personality is not very declare-y. I'm not very I'm more like, Lord, I love you. And what do we, I'm not, but I felt like in that moment, God was using Mike. He was talking about more like declaring things over the country, but I felt like he was using Mike to say, what about this? Just because you're not that, maybe you should be sometimes. And so I said, okay, Lord, I think that's you. And then I watched a sermon online, and the guy he was talking from Luke, I think it's 4:39, and Jesus came across a woman with a fever, and Jesus actually rebuked the fever. Jesus didn't talk to a spirit. He didn't talk to the woman. He rebuked the fever. And I go, that's interesting. He talked to symptoms. And I just felt in my heart like God was going, let's go. Let's do something with your righteous anger. Let's fight. And I started saying, all right, I declare, I'm doing this. Lord, what's your will? What do you want me to do about it? And now, mind you, I didn't give up. I was taking vitamin C and D and zinc. I feel like God's like, great. You need those things anyway, right? He's not like, be devoid of anything and you don't ever go to the hospital and all. It wasn't like that. I felt like he's like, yeah, let's declare and let's fight this thing. And so that's kind of where it is. And I started to get better. It wasn't instantaneous. It was like, but I'm like 100%. Like I'm out of it. And I just feel like with COVID, if you're like me and you go, man, I prayed for someone, I don't know what happened. They were people of faith. I can't think they did something wrong. If you're like me, I felt like the Lord directed me to the passage where he sent the disciples to do some miracles. And they were successful. But one time they ran into a wall. And one time it didn't work. And they came, what the answer was? Hey, let's get back to Jesus. And they went back to Jesus, and you know what happened? Jesus knew the answer, and Jesus could fix things. And I feel like that's where we are here. So let me wrap this up. The prophetic. I believe God has placed our church here on purpose. I believe that he wants to do some miracles. And I believe even right now, specifically, he would like to do some for people that have COVID. I've got some leaders, if you guys want to come up right now, and so that they can pray. Here's the thing. If you know somebody who has COVID and you need a miracle or you want to declare something, we have numerous people, a half dozen that I know of from our church that are home today because of it. I want you to come up with their name and agree with these people. And the whole pattern is, let's look to God. God, what are you saying about this? What do you want me to pray? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? And then speak it out. Now, it doesn't just have to be COVID. You might need a miracle in another area of your life. This invitation for prayer is just, do you want to go to God for something that you need that's a miracle? Your job, your finances, your health. But specifically, COVID's a thing. I'm mad. I think we're not supposed to just go, it won. The fact that my loved ones are dead doesn't make me go, there's nothing we can do. It makes me mad and say, Lord, what do we do? I'm rallying back to Jesus. What do you want to do? Let's fight. Let's not just be passive about it. So again, that's not normally me. So I would ask if you would stand. If you need to go, you can. But if you don't need to go, I'd ask that you stay. And if you need a miracle, I want you to come up and let these people pray and declare things over you. And if you know somebody, you want to come and stand in the gap for them, they can't be here because they have COVID, and you're like, I'm mad about it, I don't want them to die, Lord, I'm looking for intervention. If you want that, I want you to come up right now.